Good morning. Welcome back to Morgan Hill Farms. We are headed down to the garden today. I have a ton of seed potatoes that I have got to get in the ground. These are potatoes that I'm holding here from last season. They have super long sprouts, and now is the perfect time to plant them in the nice, cool spring weather. I don't actually think we're in spring yet, but we're very, very close. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be planting my potatoes in these 3 raised beds, and I already have some snap peas right along the edge where the trellises are. And so I'm choosing these beds for my potatoes because potatoes love nitrogen, and peas, as we all know, fix nitrogen from the atmosphere into the soil. And so I'm hoping that that is going to give me a really great harvest this year. So you can see that this seed potato has quite a bit of sprouts on it. This is a seed potato that I saved from last year's harvest. It's just kind of sat in my closet. There's no controlled environment in there, and they've done very, very well. So I'm going to be planting these Kennebec potatoes in these 3 beds. I also have a purple variety, and then I also have some more Kennebec from the farm store, just because I wanted to have enough potatoes for the year. So, like I said, there's lots of sprouts on this. The one thing that you do not want to do if you are saving your own seed potatoes and they have a lot of sprouts, do not pull these sprouts off. And the reason is because your potato has taken so much of its energy to make these sprouts. If you pull them off, you're either setting it back where it has to create new ones, or if it doesn't have the energy to do that because it's already expended so much on these, it will just end up rotting in your soil. So leave these intact.
So these beds that we're working in here have already been amended with about 2 inches of really good quality compost. And you're gonna see that we're gonna start by digging some trenches. Initially we used a trenching shovel, but found that our hands were a little bit easier to use. And what we're going to do in those trenches, after we dig them down as deep as we can, about 8 inches or so, is we're actually going to put some additional compost in there. And what that's going to do is it's going to provide really good organic matter for the potatoes to root directly into and have direct access to once they start to grow. That's really going to give them a nice boost, and it's going to create a better harvest for us. This is one step that I would not skip. This has always given me such better results when I add compost directly to these trenches. Now you're going to notice that a lot of these guys have some really long sprouts on them, and when I plant them, I'm not going to leave any of those sprouts exposed to the surface of the soil, and that basically has to do with the fact of the timing when I'm planting these. So I'm planting these in the beginning of March, and we still may have some freezes coming. So if I leave those sprouts exposed to the surface and we have a freeze, I'm going to lose that part of the sprout. So I want to give them some time to develop a little bit underground before they come up. And I'm hoping that then we won't have any more freezes or frosts and my potatoes will be just fine. Now, if you do find that your potatoes kind of sprout up before you anticipated, you can come down and just cover those with soil on those cold nights, and that will protect the foliage. If you don't, the foliage will die and it will just set your potato plant back, so your harvest will be a little bit later in the season. So I'm spacing these guys about 8 to 12 inches apart, and then I'm just using my next trench that I'm going to make and I'm covering them up. Once I've placed everything in the beds, we'll go ahead and smooth this out and give them a nice watering. Now these particular beds here, because I do have the peas on the left-hand side, I'm only able to get about 3 rows of potatoes in here, but in a 4x8 bed, I typically get 4 rows of potatoes, and this year I'm planting about 75 pounds of potatoes for our family. Last year we did 50, and it was almost enough for the year, so this year we're upping it just a little bit. Now, potatoes are actually very heavy feeders. I've heard a lot of people say that potatoes will grow in any soil, but if you ask a potato farmer that, he will tell you that that is not true. So what you can do if you know your soil is lacking is you have a couple of options. You can either go with a 10-10-10 fertilizer if you want to do a synthetic one, or if you want to go more organic, you can go with a blood meal or a bone meal, or if you want to be really cost effective, you can make your own, and that would be something like coffee grounds for nitrogen, maybe some ground up eggshells for calcium, and some dehydrated and ground up banana peels for potassium. If you're going to use this last option of the homemade fertilizer, I would recommend amending your beds with that at least a month in advance to give that some time to break down in the soil and become available for your potatoes to actually take up.
Okay, so we finished the back 3 beds with the Kennebec potatoes. And I decided that since I had everybody down here helping me, that we were gonna plant our Purple Majesty potatoes. So we prepped these 2 beds. Vincent's getting me a little more compost, and then everybody else has kind of trickled up to the house. They've got some school, we've got sports tonight. So I'm gonna finish this up. So in the end, I'll actually end up having 6 beds of potatoes, and I still actually have more seed potatoes up at the house. This is something I struggle with every year. Is getting too many seeds, too many plants. I'm sure it'll all work out fine. We'll just have a lot of fun potatoes this year.
Potatoes can be grown directly in the ground, they can be grown in raised beds, and even in containers. Now, the reason that I choose to do mine in my raised beds is because I can control the soil type in these a little bit better. My in-ground garden soil tends to get a little heavy and a little bit clay-like, but in my raised beds, if I notice that my soil is kind of heavy and compact, I'll just add some peat moss to that, and it's gonna really help to lighten the soil and make it nice and fluffy and airy so that my potatoes can grow well in that. Another thing that the peat moss also does is it will help to acidify your soil. Potatoes like a pH of about 6 to 6.5, so if you notice that you're more neutral at 7 or even a little bit alkaline, that peat moss is going to help you out. So depending on your needs for your family, you can choose to either plant determinate or indeterminate potatoes. Both varieties that I'm doing this year are determinate, and basically the difference is that your indeterminate potatoes will have a much longer growing season, and they're called a main crop potato. So they're going to give you larger tubers and a larger harvest. However, the reason that I really like the indeterminate varieties is because they have a shorter growing season, and if you live in a place where you have a very long growing season, you can actually get 2 crops. You can plant another set of potatoes in June and harvest those in September before your first frost. So your indeterminate potatoes will take about 3 to 3.5 months to harvest, and then you can go ahead and pop some more in the ground and get additional potatoes.
Okay guys, so that is it. We've got our potatoes in. I'm gonna go up to the house and take a break, but I am gonna grab a few carrots here. We're running out of carrots up at the house, so I am gonna harvest a few carrots here. It's getting a little warm in the summertime for these guys, so I'm gonna have to get these up anyways. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below. But anyways, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.